Yo, what's up, guys? TS Games here, back at you with another Teach a Friend. Now, this one's probably going to be a little bit shorter because a lot of this lesson revolved around the more religious side of what we're learning today, and so there's I can still what is on my phone? Okay, sorry. I can still teach it from a non-religious standpoint. It's just going to be a little bit shorter as there's less information there, but that's okay. Now, as I said last week, this week we're talking about work. And work in this sense refers to more than just, like working, like having a job and stuff like that. I was also talking about service to others and, all sorts of different kinds of work. And one of the important things about this is that it's both a commandment and a blessing. We're commanded to work, but that's a religious thing. I was supposed to avoid that. My bad. We're supposed to work. It helps us. That's why we're supposed to do it. Is because it is both helpful to us and whoever we're working for. And there's a quote by what's his name? H. David Burton. Yeah, that's his name. Okay. And he says in an article he gave on work, he says, "To work honestly and productively brings contentment and a sense of self-worth." And I think that's true. I remember when I had my summer job up at Witsit, it's the scout camp that I worked at. Remember working there, it was once I actually started getting to work, because when I first started there, I kind of had a habit of waiting around and waiting to be told what to do, and that's not exactly the way you're supposed to do it, because if you wait around to be told what to do, then there are tasks that are supposed to be being completed that aren't being completed, and thus you're hurting the people you're working with and the people you're working for. So once I learned to start working for myself, I can go into a story on that. So what I did was I started feeling like I wasn't valuable. I wasn't helping because, well, technically I wasn't. I wasn't helping when I should have been. And I noticed that, so one of the things that we did over in my area, I worked in High Adventure. One of the things we did was we provided bike rides for some of the scouts, on certain days of each week that they were there. On certain days of the week that the scouts were there. I was there for 7 weeks, but the scouts are only there for 1 week at a time. But each week that we had bike rides that the scouts could participate in. But when we started camp, there were a lot of bikes that were broken. Like, we only had like 20 something, if I remember correctly. And we had well over 40 in total, but a lot of them were broken. And there was only 1 or 2 people who even knew how. So there was one actual, my boss, the person my boss, the person I worked for, the director for High Adventure. I mean, I had higher bosses, the ones who paid me, but that's irrelevant. The person who I was working for specifically in High Adventure, he could fix bikes, but for the most part he was doing director stuff or teaching one of the classes. I never taught any of the class. Well, I did later, but at that time I wasn't teaching the classes. I was only doing cope, which was, I helped with cope for the most part. And but there was one class at 10 and another class in the afternoon, because it was a long class, so the hours between 9 and then, so I had a lot of off time over there. And during that off time, there was bikes that needed to be fixed, but no one there to fix them. So what I did was I found a bike repair manual, and I read it, basically. I read all there was to know that I needed to in order to fix those bikes, and I just started doing it. I asked for help from another one of the staff members who had been there for like 4 years, and he knew how to fix bikes because he works at a bike shop, outside of camp. You know, when he's at home, he works at a bike shop, which was helpful because he knows how to fix bikes. So he helped me out a little bit, and within the next couple of weeks, I had fixed several, gotten helped to get our bike count up to 40, and even built 3 of them from spare parts in our spare parts shed. You know, like they were old bikes that had been scrapped for parts, so I put new parts on them and built 3 new ones. 2 of them were functional. One of them, for some reason, was just not working well, but whatever. That's irrelevant. But the point of all this was, I've been talking for too long. The point of all this was that once I learned to not just wait around and be told what to do, to not just kind of sit around and be idle, I really felt valuable. And, you know, my boss, you know, was actually, I was actually praised for what I was doing, for going out of my way to help with those bikes. And it was, you know, it was really a blessing to me. And so that's one of the things that I wasn't actually planning on talking about, but it just came up there with the sense of self-worth, because I really did feel valuable, is that you really shouldn't be idle in your work. You shouldn't sit around and wait for something to happen and wait to be told what to do. You should get up, and if you know a task needs to be completed that you are capable of completing, don't wait to be told what to do it. Just go and do it. And you're not doing it to seek praise from your boss. You're doing it because it's a task that needs to be done. And when you're working, you should always make sure to go above and beyond your regular old work duties, because it's helpful, and we should be helpful. We should be that kind of person. And so next thing I want to talk about is why or what type of work we should go into as in a career field. So all of us have talents and interests and gifts of a sort, I guess. All of us have something that we're good at and something that we're really, really, you know, interested in. Typically those things go hand in hand, but like me personally, I really like science. I also like music and theater and also other stuff, but I really like science, and that's really a career choice that I really want to go into, and so I'm going to do that. So now, there's another quote by H. David Burton. All of the quotes I'm going to be reading are by him, I believe. Yes, they are. Okay. It says, "Learning to recognize our talents and gifts and interests is an important first step in career preparation." So, when you're looking for a career, you have to start with education. You have to get educated in order to be, what's the word? I can't think of the word. What's it called? Whatever. You need to be educated in that field in order to be eligible for that career choice, I guess. And the best thing to do is to seek out a career that matches your interests and your talents, things that you're good at. You're gonna want a career in something that you are good at. Otherwise, at least something you're interested in, because otherwise you're not going to enjoy your time in that career, and you're not going to work as hard, because you know how they say if you are happy with what you do, you never have to work a day in your life, or something like that. I'm misquoting it somewhere. I don't know it word for word, but you know what I mean. And I think that probably holds true. If you don't enjoy the work that you're doing, then you're not going to be, you know, working up to your full potential with it. You're not going to be very productive in that field, because you're going to be bored. So it's important that you pick something that you're interested in. Otherwise, so that you're happy with what you do, and so that you work really productively. And now into the education part. There's one long quote here. It's a longer quote. It's basically almost 2 paragraphs, sort of. It's like a couple sentences, but it says, When we have examined our own interests and abilities, and when we have taken counsel from those who know and love us, we need to seek both education and experience in our chosen career field. Education and training are among the most worthwhile investments anyone can make. Learn to love learning. Just as it is important to continue making deposits into a savings account, it is important to continue educating yourself in your chosen profession or career so that your skills will always be marketable. I really like what he said there, with saying, when he said learn to love learning, because, well, I personally do love learning. I like learning everything there is to know about absolutely everything. That's just the kind of person I am. Now, that's not exactly what he's talking about here. What he's talking about is learn to not be bored by the education process, I think is what he's getting at here. Is because then, obviously, while you're in school, you're still working. You know, there's work to do in school. I'm working right now because I have an assignment. I'm doing that assignment, you know. Anyway, and if I didn't enjoy doing it, then I would do a really terrible job at it, and I wouldn't be learning to the best of my ability, and therefore, when I go into the career path that follows whatever it is I'm learning, I won't be as good at it because I won't be as prepared, because I haven't learned as much as I could have. So I think that's why you need to learn to love learning. Learn to love the education process because it's going to help you significantly. Another thing I want to mention, I don't have like a quote for it or anything, but something I want to touch on is giving and accepting help. When you're working, you are serving other people. So that's the giving help portion of it. But there's another thing, you want to be able to accept help to humbly accept help, because everybody needs help at some point, you know. So if you're so you shouldn't be the kind of person who is too prideful to the point where they won't accept help from another person. I remember my band director came up to me and he told me that he was willing to he had a friend who gave lessons for the saxophone, which is the instrument that I played in band. And he told me that he would pay for 2 lessons if I was willing to accept them. And I was all over that because I was preparing for an audition into an honor band, which I didn't end up getting, but that's irrelevant. But I remember I accepted those lessons, and it was an incredible blessing because just those 2 lessons, those 2-hour-long lessons that I got from that teacher were incredible, and they made me a much better player. And there was another student that he gave the same offer to, and he rejected that offer because he's like, "Son, no, I'm too good. I'm too good. I don't need lessons," or something like that, you know. And it's kind of sad that he rejected lessons like that because, I mean, 1, lessons are expensive, and 2, they are incredibly helpful in so many ways. So you should always be willing to accept help from others when they're offering it. I mean, there are times when actually, there's pretty much always a time when you should be willing to accept help from other people because they're willing to help you. So, yeah, that's another thing. There's another quote here. This is under the heading teaching children to work, because that's another thing we should do, is we should teach our children to the same principles that I'm teaching you now. One of parents' most important responsibilities is to teach their children to work. Even young children can begin to experience benefits of working when they are involved in household chores and in service to others. Wise parents will work alongside their children, will provide frequent praise, and will make sure no task is overwhelming. That paragraph explains all I wanted to talk about with teaching children to work. And yeah, so I think that's all I really need to talk about here. I think it's so important that we learn to work to our full potential, and we learn to enjoy doing it, because if we're not enjoying it, we're not working to our full potential. And I think it's really important to choose a career path in our in something that we're interested in. And yeah, and so that's really all I have to say about that. So I'm gonna leave this video here. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with all of your friends. I think it'll really help them. In the next video, we're talking about personal finance management, I think. Personal financial management. Anyway, so yeah, but until then, you guys just enjoy yourselves, and I will see you in the next one, alright? Bye-bye!